Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing the brakes on a 2015 Honda CRV. We'll go through all the things that you will need to buy and all the tools you'll need to do it. It's a pretty simple job. I already did the driver's side, so I worked out all the kinks for you already. So first step, jack the car up. Yeah, so walk you through that. So you can jack it up with whatever you got, but I like to jack it up from the frame right there and then put the jack stand on the little jacking tab right there. So I realize some of you aren't going to have this stuff, so just jack it up as safely as you can. It's best to use a jack stand because you're going to be under it. And then, so next, what you're going to need to do is pop your brake fluid cap right here, because you're going to need to squeeze the caliper piston back in so that you can get the new pad in there. So you just pop this cap off. Put it right there, leave it open. And then what you're gonna need to do is take the wheel off. So on mine, I've replaced these probably twice now, since I always live in next to the ocean in salt conditions. So you just pop these guys off. Mine happened to be a 19 millimeter. So we'll get to that. Let's see. Got it on my ratchet. And if you guys are going to be doing any wrenching on your cars, I highly recommend one of these little electric impacts, because they are a huge time saver. You just put it on there and take it right off. You do all 5, and then we'll set the tire off to the side here. If you don't have this, you can just take them off with whatever you got, but this is definitely the way to go. And obviously you're supposed to use the impact socket, but I can't find mine, so using this one. Cool, so then just set your lug nuts off to the side, clean them up, whatever you want to do to them. It's only 4, where'd the 5th go? Oh, there it is. Roll your tire off to the side. Hi. Alright, so next step in the process is going to be taking... Alright, next step in the process is you're going to pull these 2 14 millimeter bolts out of the back of here and here. And then you're going to pop this guy off. Sometimes they're a little tight, so you got to pry them off of there. Before you get it all the way off though, you're going to need a bungee cord or something to support the caliper while you work on it. So I like to just kind of loop it around up here in the shocks somewhere. Of course, that was a hook there. So, okay. So I like to have it hanging there, and then you just kind of pull this out of the way. Just be careful with your rubber hose there. Cool, so just hang it up just like that. It's out of the way. You can see that boot is just throwing nastiness all over mine. Man, it's gonna be a whole thing. That's alright, just a boot. It is starting to click, so that makes sense. Alright, so that exposes your brake pads, which mine aren't terrible, but they're starting to squeak pretty bad, and they're also starting to vibrate pretty bad as well. So on the backs of these, you have these little spreader wires. They go into the back of the pad. That, one on each side, and what they're designed to do is to literally spread your pads off of the rotor so they don't sit there on there the whole time. So that may be what's going bad on mine, but I've had these rotors turned before, so figured I'd change them. Also, while we're here, alright, so those are your pads, and just kind of take note how they came out. So you have orientation, right? So it's shaped the same as the rotor, and then you just have to know. So if you look on the back here, you can see these piston marks. Those marks match the piston coming out of the caliper. So you know that one goes on the inside and that one goes on the outside. But anyway, I like to just leave them how they came off, right next to it. And also remember this stuff for your hardware. One goes there, one goes here. Alright, and then the next step is pulling this guy off, which is two 19mm bolts. These guys are pretty tight, so I'll post the torque specs in the instructions as well. So the next step is going to be ripping those guys off, and then we'll take our caliper bracket off, we'll clean it up, and we'll grease our pins here. These ones move pretty nice, so that's good. But I like to take them off and scrub them down and put new grease in them anyway. And so I'll bust this bracket off and we'll start back up. Okay, so this is that bracket that comes off there. You can see I got the two bolts out. And then you can also see these are the slides that come out, and you want to be careful not to rip your boot here. But if you kind of twist and pull at the same time, you'll pull the whole mechanism out there. So all this does is slide in there, and then this boot keeps the dust and moisture out. So you can see this boot's actually really clean. A lot of cars, this is gummed up pretty bad. But what I do is I just drop it in a bucket with some water and soap in it. Just pop it in there along with the bracket. And then you just kind of go along and scrub as much corrosion off of this as you want. I'm gonna brake here and get this all cleaned up. Oh wait, never mind. We gotta take the rotor off real quick. So to get these rotors off, there's a Phillips head screw somewhere. Oh yeah, right here. Sorry, it's really gummy. Phillips head screw there. So a lot of times those are super difficult to get out. What you'll need is one of these like impact screwdrivers. You can get them at Harbor Freight pretty cheap. And all you do is you put it on there and you smack it with a hammer, and as you hit it, it twists it at the same time, pops it out. Might be able to set you up here and see. And it comes out. So don't try this with a regular screwdriver, because you're just going to strip it and you're going to have to drill it and all that stuff, and that's the whole thing. So just pay the 25 bucks or whatever these are at Harbor Freight and get yourself one, because they are very handy. But once you get that off, the rotor should come off now. So you just tap them and they come right up. If they're really stuck, you could use these threaded holes right here, and what that does is it threads through the rotor and pushes on this and pushes it off. But I'm going to show you a trick on how to make it so that doesn't stick to the hub there. We'll go over that, but you can see this rotor is pretty pretty grooved, pretty bad, and it's pretty wobbly on the when you're braking down the hill, so it was time. So that one wasn't nearly as bad, but that one's the culprit for sure. Alright, so now I'm gonna brake and clean all this up and clean this up, and we'll resume from there. Okay, so once you get it all cleaned up, you're gonna go ahead and grease the shaft on that and reinstall your little rubber boot on both sides. Shove it back in. I didn't have any grease, so I'm just using the anti-seize. I'm sure that's wrong, but it's better than nothing. So we're gonna do that, and then next step, you're going to take an old pad and set it like that against the piston. Well, this dual piston. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your C-clamp or whatever you got. I got this wood C-clamp. I don't know where my regular C-clamp went. So I'm trying to squeeze that in, but it's not going. So I'm gonna grab another one, put it on that side, and see if that helps. This might be the issue. I might have a clogged up caliper. Well, I couldn't get it to go in as far as the other side, but it went in, but I can move them by hand. It's kind of weird, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they go in, or if the new pads will go on without any issue. Okay, anyway, moving on. Next step, we're gonna slap the rotor back on, and then we'll slap on the bracket. And after that, we'll keep going. So, all right, let me get it on there. It's hard to do with one hand. Okay, so this is the new rotors I got. Got them from Rock Auto. There was a deal for all 4 of them, and it was going to be cheaper than what I could get for like 2 of them at the local parts store. So, it came with 4 rotors, pads all the way around, and hardware for everything for, I think it was under $200. So, just look out for deals on Rock Auto. Sometimes they got good ones, sometimes they don't. But if you're like me and you live in a saltwater environment, sometimes getting stuff off is a pain. So what you do is you just take some anti-seize and you just coat, you just put some kind of all around here, all around where the rotor meets the hub, so that you don't get any corrosion on those 2 surfaces, because if this corrodes to the rotor, it's a nightmare to get it off. And I like to do some anti-seize on the lug nuts, because not all of you are gonna keep good tools in your car all the time. If you ever had to change a tire that wouldn't come off on the side of the road, it's a nightmare. So just little stuff like this will help you out in the long run. Cool. There's that. Alright, so now that that's good, we're gonna slap the rotor on and just make sure you use some brake clean here to get the preserving liquid off of this stuff, because then your pads won't break in good. And so the only thing about this is you see the little threaded hole right there. You got to make sure that you put a non-threaded hole on the rotor in that spot, so that way your little screw that you took out, here's the focus, comes out. And make sure you put a little anti-seize on that guy. Okay. There's a torque spec for this, but as long as you just tighten it up, it's gonna suck the rotor on good and square for you. A lot of people leave these out because they end up having to drill them out because they don't put anti-seize on them, or the person who put it together last didn't put any anti-seize on it. So just don't get anti-seize on your actual rotor or pads and you'll be all good. So there's that. This one came with a nice corrosive preventive coating on it here, so should look good for a while. And then, let's see, next step is we're going to load up the caliper bracket, throw that on there, and then we'll install the hardware. So, okay, so that's back on. Make sure you put anti-seize on those bolts. Again, those are 19 millimeter. And make sure you put it's going to be that bolt there and that bolt right there, 19 millimeter, and torque it to spec. Or not, whatever. And then, so next you're going to make sure you put your hardware on correctly, and make sure you put a little dab of anti-seize there on both sides. And then these little clips sit just like that, and they'll clip in. And just kind of look and make sure it's not contacting the rotor anywhere, because that'll be real squeaky. And the same as the other one, so it goes like this. No, it doesn't. It goes like this. Just kidding. This. Cool. And make sure you're replacing your hardware if you're doing your rotors, because otherwise you run the risk of breaking hardware or rusting hardware through. Like, you see how bad these get. And they lose all their spring tension and all that. So, yep. So just make sure you're swapping it out when you're doing your pads. And make sure you're getting good kits, because I've had kits that straight had the wrong hardware in them. So, okay, so next what I like to do is load up the pads. So you can see this pad has this tab on it, and that's the side that had the piston contacting it. So that means this one goes on that side, and it goes like this. And you want to make sure, again, you're spraying the pads with brake cleaner and getting all the whatever liquids or preserving fluids have been put on them from factory, so that they break in properly. So I'll just swap them there and there. And that should be good. And new hardware is always real tight, so there you go. Eventually you'll get it so it slips into the groove there. And you can see our hole here and our hole down here. That's going to be for our retaining pins. And so you can see this kind of slips into here like that. If you start at an angle, slip it in. That works good. So that's what you have to do for the back one too. And let's clean these off. And then this is where your grease comes into play that they supply you with. So this just goes on the back of the pad here. Wear gloves, because it's a messy job. And for the back one too. This one's a little harder. You could do this beforehand, before you put them on there if you want, but cool. So that's on there. And let's see if this will go, this caliper will go on there. So it's kind of just the same as you took it off. Might not fit. I might have a bad caliper here, I'm not sure. Because like I said, this typically, when you squeeze it, goes all the way in, and that's like flush. So I'll be shocked if this fits. And if I don't have, or if it doesn't work, then it's kind of a showstopper because the parts store closed already. So, alright, let's give it a shot. So again, you just kind of look at how your hose goes. Oops, I almost forgot. Almost forgot the little clips that I was telling you about. Okay, so these just go here and here, and then hopefully it stays in place, but sometimes they pop out, so it's kind of a balancing act. You guys squeeze them together while you put the caliper back on. Alright, I need both hands, but that's what you do. I'll keep on going and then I'll get it together and I'll show you, talk about it. Okay, yeah, so it didn't go on because that piston wasn't pushed all the way in, but for whatever reason I set it down here instead of up there and it just pushed in just like it was supposed to. So I don't know, that's weird. So next step, you get your caliper bolts here and make sure you put anti-seize on them. And you just thread it in. And I'll try to put all the torque specs like overlaid over the video here for you, so you don't have to keep looking back and forth. And yeah, that boot right there is gonna be probably my next video. A little CV axle. And these were 14s. Okay, now that's all you do here. You can throw the tire on and then we'll take the back tire off and we'll do the rear brakes. So stand by. Forgot to mention, if you put a light coat of anti-seize on that surface there, it'll coat this surface here so that when you take the tire off, it'll actually come off and not be stuck there. So helpful tip. Okay, so that tire's off. It's gonna be basically the same steps as the front, just a little bit different back here. So you have a different size bolt for your caliper bolts. These are 12s instead of 14s, and then your actual bracket is held on with a 17 millimeter instead of a 19 millimeter. So it's gonna be these guys right here. So one there and then one underneath. So same thing though. So we're gonna rip the caliper off, get the pads out, and then we'll get that bracket off, and then we'll pull the rotor off. This one's a little different than the front because there's a drum brake on the inside of this for the parking brake. Your adjustment is here, if you weren't aware of that. You pop that out and you can turn the little star, it's down here. So you got to rotate this to the bottom, and then you can play with a star down there and make it tighter or looser. So, but mine feels pretty good, so I'm not going to worry about it. You should be able to hear a little drag like that. Not like a lot, but just a little drag. And then, yeah, so I'll start ripping this off. Okay, so all that came off pretty easily. So this is your drum brake assembly that's in here. And So this is the adjuster that I was telling you about right here. So right there. So you're just going to stick a screwdriver in there and turn that guy. And that's going to apply pressure to that. It's going to push it out and make more contact if your parking brake is like going all the way to the floor or something, or just straight up not getting tight. You're just going to push that. Mine's fine, so I'm not going to really mess with mine. Alright, so next step, we're going to clean all this up. Clean up the bracket, clean up the boots. It's the same principle as the other one. So make sure these are free moving. All of mine have been so far. So, but that's because I was in here 80,000 miles ago. So I'm going to take this off, clean these up, and clean up all this stuff. The only another difference for the rear is the way that the pads are. So this one has like a 3 prongs that go into the actual piston. So it's kind of a pain to take it out. It's even more of a pain to get the new one in. So sheesh. Yeah, that thing is in there super tight. But just work at it, you'll get it out. And you're replacing everything anyway, so cool. Alright, well I'm going to clean everything up and then I'll start you back up when I start reassembly. Alright, so everything's all cleaned up. I got the bracket reassembled, anti-seize on everything. I'm going to put a little more on here, just around this hub. And on all my bolts here. So first step in reassembling is we're going to put our bracket back on, and you can see those are the bolts, or the bolt holes where the, take it back. That's not the first step. First step is putting the new rotor on. I'm going to go grab that. Sorry about that. Alright, got everything all cleaned up, got my anti-seize all over everything. On all my surfaces there, and then on my bracket got the new anti-seize inside the sliders, so they go real good. Resealed anti-seize on all the bolts. I just got to pop the new rotor on and then spray it, and then we have to transfer the plug to the other one, so I'll show you that after I get it on. Okay, new rotor's on. Got the plug swapped from that one into this one. This is just the plug for your adjuster, so you would just rotate this to the bottom where the adjuster is here, and then you'd be able to stick something in there and tighten her down. Alright, so, but this thing has like 160,000 on it, and I've never had to adjust that, so unless you're driving around with your e-brake on, you should be okay. Okay, so next we're going to slap the bracket back on. Goes like this, right here in this little groove. Might be able to get it. I don't know. Let's see. See if I can do it with one hand. Maybe. Perfect. And there you go. So if I can do it with one hand, you should be fine. Use the old torque wrench, torque it to, I'll never forget how much it is, I'll put it on here. Cool. And let's see, next we're gonna build the caliper. So it takes one of these, your spreader, I guess is what it'd be called. It just kind of sits like this, but on the inside. So you just scoop it from the bottom. And from the top. Put it in, and boom, and it clicks. So it just sits like that. And then we need to push that piston in. So I'll grab my C-clamp. Maybe this one will cooperate more. Oh yeah, see? And you just squeeze it till it's flush. And that'll make the new pads go in good. Then these little guys go on here. There we go. 1 and 2. Cool. And this is where you put the grease on these, just on this surface, because your pads have to squeeze and come out. And just a nice thin coat, that's all you need. Alright, so then the rear pad you have to put the pad that goes inside of the piston on first. And that just rests in here. So it's tricky though, because you gotta get this clip to compress and go in there. It goes just like that, right there. But I don't think I'll be able to do it with one hand, so I'm gonna pause it. Okay, got that thing in there. That's a pain, by the way. And then make sure you spray it down with brake clean. And then your next pad just sits in here. It's the easiest way I've found to do it. So that one just sits there, and then you want to put your grease on the back side of your pads as well. Cool. And then you just take your, slip it on there. Make sure your slides aren't getting caught. Cool. And there we go. It's on. Slap your bolts in. And then now is a good time, now that all the pads are on, just go back and replace your cap, just so you don't forget. See how the level changed? And that's because we moved those pistons in, which push the fluid this way. If you don't take this cap off, the fluid's not going to go anywhere and you won't be able to do anything. So just make sure you put it back on there. Cool. Alright, now we won't forget, because if you press the brakes with that off, you get brake fluid everywhere. So don't forget that. And then torque these guys to spec. Okay, and that's about everything. We'll just hit it with one more little blast of this. And then I've already put the anti-seize on there, so I'll just slap the tire back on and should be all set. So cool. Well, this is how you do a brake job on a 2015 Honda CRV. Thanks for watching, and let me know if this helped you out or not. Have a good one.